Hey guys, so today I'm sharing a drugstore makeup starter kit. All of these recommendations are, of course, from the drugstore, and they're great recommendations for anyone who is maybe getting into makeup. They're all very beginner friendly, whether that's you that's getting into makeup or you've got like a teenager or someone in your life who is kind of dipping their toes into wearing makeup. These are great options. Or if you already have a solid collection and you're just looking for some great drugstore picks, these are great options to check out. Before we get into it, I do want to make a really exciting announcement. I just launched a Patreon. So if you want to check it out, I'll have it linked below. But this is basically a place for anybody who wants to lend a little bit of support to my channel. It's so appreciated, and in return you will get all sorts of different kind of bonus perks. We'll have a bonus video going up each month, and you'll get to decide on what the topic will be. So it could be, you know, a palette throwback video, it could be something totally unrelated to makeup, like a vlog or a lifestyle type of video, and there will also be early access to my monthly project pans. You'll be able to have some input in what happens here on my YouTube channel and ad-free access to videos, things like that. And I'm just so excited to have it finally up and running and to get to kind of hang out and get to know some of you guys a little bit better. So definitely check that out if you're interested. And just in case you're curious, everything on my channel will stay the same. This is just kind of something extra. All right, so let's get into these drugstore makeup recommendations. So just kind of going in order of a full face of makeup, I'll start with foundation. And I do have two options depending on your skin type, because foundation can just be so personal and things are going to work totally differently depending on your skin type. So my first recommendation is for anyone with a normal to oily skin type. I wouldn't recommend this for dry skin, but I love this one when my skin is a little bit more on the oily side. The NYX Born to Glow foundation. It's funny because reading the name of this and the description, you would think it would be better for dry skin, because usually if you have dry skin, you're going for something described as radiant, glowy, luminous, all those things. But I do think this is a slightly radiant foundation, but I would not describe it as dewy at all. So don't think that this is like super hydrating. But if you have oily skin and you're looking for something that is just very skin-like and still has a little bit of life to it, that's not just a completely flat matte foundation, I highly recommend this. It looks beautiful on oilier skin, and it holds up really well throughout the day. You might be scared off from the name because you might think that it's going to break down really quickly because it's glowy, but I actually find that this holds up really well. So I think this is a great, somewhat radiant foundation for normal to oily skin or even combination skin. And the coverage on this is really good. It's got good like high medium coverage. So if you've got acne or acne scarring, discoloration, anything you want to cover, this will really help to camouflage that. It's not completely full coverage, but it has good coverage and it's very buildable. I just wouldn't recommend this if you have any kind of like dry patches or anything like that, because it can just not quite sit well on those, but otherwise it's beautiful. Like, I'm really impressed with this. And you'll notice I'm not mentioning any primers. I just don't think you need primer. I think it's kind of an extra optional step. I just don't think it's a necessary product to have in a starter kit. My other foundation recommendation is a great option if you've got more normal to dry leaning skin. I think this one could work for all skin types, but I especially like it for when my skin is a little bit more dry. This is the CoverGirl Clean Fresh Skin Milk. And this is a lighter coverage option. I wouldn't say it's the sheerest coverage ever, like it does have a little bit of coverage, but it's more along the lines of like a tinted moisturizer or a BB cream. And this is a little bit more dewy, but it's definitely not the dewiest foundation. I would say it's skin-like leaning dewy. It does feel nice and hydrating, so if you've got dry skin, I think this will be a great one to look into. And I really like the way that this wears. I do find that even if my skin gets a little bit oily as the day goes on, it doesn't cause this to look really separated or cakey or anything. It wears very gracefully as the day goes on. Even if it does fade a little bit, it doesn't look gross like I feel like some foundations can. So really recommend this one for really any skin type, but probably more normal to dry. So those are my two drugstore foundation picks. I love both of these, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. All right, for concealer, this is actually my current favorite concealer, not just from the drugstore, but across the board. It is the E.L.F. Hydrating Camo Concealer. I recommend this over the original E.L.F. Camo Concealer. This one is just much easier to wear. The original Camo can look a little bit cakey and dry. I also had a friend tell me she didn't like that one either. She just felt like it kind of made her under eyes look textured. So honestly, I'd stay away from that unless you're looking for something really full coverage. And with that one, you'd want to just use a very small amount. This one is just, I think, this is going to work for the most people across the board because it walks that kind of fine line between having good coverage but also feeling hydrating and not like sucking all the moisture out of your under eyes. This is what I have on my under eyes today, and you can see it really has covered up my under eyes really nicely. I do have dark circles, and this does a great job covering them up without making my under eyes look cakey and crepey and all those things that you don't want. It has a really nice chubby doe foot applicator. For some reason, I just enjoy that. I feel like it's just more satisfying to apply for some reason. And yeah, I can't recommend this highly enough. I really love it. All right, my powder recommendation is another CoverGirl product, and this is actually the counterpart to the foundation. This is their Clean Fresh pressed powder. And they've got a translucent version of this as well as a few different shades. I have the shade Fair, which matches, I also have the shade Fair in the foundation. And I really like this powder. It's very finely milled. Even though it's a pressed powder, I feel like I'm able to get a very nice thin but even layer of this on my skin. I use it both for setting my under eyes and all over my face. It does mattify a little bit. I don't have the oiliest skin in the world, so I'm probably not the best person to ask about, like, I don't know if this is going to be the best if you want something to keep you looking matte all day long. You may need to touch up with it, but I think it's just a great all-purpose powder for anyone, whether you have drier skin and you just want to lightly set your face, or if you have more oily skin, it does mattify as you apply it. Really recommend that. At the same time, though, I'm not that particular with pressed powders. I think they're all, I feel like they're all pretty similar for me, but this is a really good option to check out from the drugstore. And if you're buying both of these at the same time, you may be able to get like a buy one, get one half off discount at Walgreens. They often have those for CoverGirl. So, all right, my next category is bronzer, and I do think that bronzer is optional. A lot of people wear bronzer every day, but some people just don't find it necessary. But if you're looking for a good bronzer, I highly recommend the Milani Silky Matte Bronzers. I like that they're matte. I do feel like matte bronzers are a little bit easier to pull off, easier to work with. Sometimes shimmery bronzers can have like too much shimmer and you might not like the finish, or they might kind of accentuate texture, but you don't have to worry about that with a matte bronzer. So the shade I have is Sunkissed, which has a nice like neutral to cool leaning undertone, and it's just very foolproof. You can also use this to slightly contour if you want to. I think it works great as both a contour and a bronzer because it's kind of, I don't know, it's a good tone for both. It's not going to look too orange. That's another struggle a lot of people have with bronzers. I've also heard really great things about the E.L.F. primer infused bronzers, so if you're looking for another option with other shades, that would be a good one to check out as well. I just haven't personally tried those. All right, the next category is blush. I personally feel like blush is such an important step because it really just brings a lot of life to your face. I do have both a liquid and a powder blush recommendation. Some people find that liquid or cream blushes work better, or they're easier to work with, especially if you have dry skin. So the one I'd recommend for beginners is actually the Flower Beauty Blush Balm. They've got a lot of shades of this. I have the shade Pinched, and for me, sometimes I find this a little bit too sheer because it's a very subtle blush, but I think if you're a beginner, you're just starting out, sometimes that can be better because you don't have to worry as much about over applying. You don't have to worry about looking kind of clownish if you accidentally apply too much, because you really can't mess this up. And Pinched is a beautiful, like, soft peachy color that I think would be flattering on a lot of people. And it's got this nice kind of squeezy tube. I just squeeze it directly onto my cheeks and then blend it out with either my fingers or a brush. And it's just very easy to work with, so that's why I wanted to mention it in my starter kit video. And then my powder blush recommendation is actually a blush and highlighter duo, and it's only $3 for the duo, so it's just a great value. It's the E.L.F. Bite-Sized Cheek Duos. So I have two shades, Cantaloupe and Lychee. I actually would not recommend the Cantaloupe shade unless you're really into a very yellowy orange blush. This is a very unique color. It only goes with certain looks, so I probably wouldn't recommend this if you're like just starting to build your makeup collection. This is kind of a nice thing to have for some more like editorial looks, but the formula itself is really nice. And then the shade Lychee I have, for me, this is actually more of like a blush and blush mixer or blush topper duo. But if you have a deeper skin tone, this would make a beautiful highlighter. This is like a nice kind of spicy berry color. I really like this shade, but I think it would be especially beautiful on medium to deeper skin tones. But they've got a nice range of shades. I've got my eye on the shade Watermelon because that's the one Emily Noel seems to like the most. but lots of shade options, so you can pick one that's just right for you. But the formula of these is really nice, really easy to use, blendable, and I like that you also have the option to mix the highlighter with the blush if you want to get a slightly glowier blush look if that's what you're into. Let's get into some eye products now. So for the brows, I would recommend a brow pencil for beginners, and I don't currently have a brow pencil because I typically use a pomade, but for a great affordable brow pencil, I would either recommend the E.L.F. Instant Lift Brow Pencil or the E.L.F. Ultra Precise Brow Pencil, which is a much thinner kind of like micro tip brow pencil. I just think pencils are the most user-friendly option, especially for beginners to brows, and both of those are great. And then a brow gel, if you don't even want to mess with like filling in your brows with a pencil, the E.L.F. Wow Brow Gel is also great. I don't have this on hand currently because I used mine up. It's got a light tint to it, so if you don't want to mess with filling in your brows, it just adds a little bit of color to your brows, but it's not going to be so dark that it's like getting all outside the lines and making a mess. And it does kind of just hold your brows in place in the shape that you want them. So I would recommend either that and the brow pencil, or just the brow gel if you prefer something easier like that. So for eyeshadow, I always recommend an eyelid primer. I think they make a huge difference, especially if you have like oily eyelids or you live in like a humid climate. It just helps your eyeshadows stick to your lids and not crease. I remember I used to have a lot of creasing with my eyeshadows before I started using a primer a long time ago, so the Drugstore makes a lot of great ones. The Milani eyelid primer is great, but I'd also recommend the CoverGirl Lid Lockup Primer. This one you can find in almost every drugstore. I do think with a lot of primers, because they make a little bit of a tacky base for your eyeshadows to go on, I do recommend setting from like the crease up to the brow bone with either face powder or like a matte cream eyeshadow, just to help your crease colors blend a little bit better. But leave the lid part tacky, don't set the lid. That way you can get your shimmers, if you're using shimmers on your lid, to pop a little bit more. So that's what I recommend with any eyelid primer, because I have noticed sometimes with an eyelid primer, it can almost make your eyeshadows go on a little bit patchy because it's a little bit tacky. Not super tacky, but just enough to like hold the shadows. So I do recommend that trick that I mentioned to help with that. But the CoverGirl Lid Lockup Primer is great. It's got a nice little doe foot applicator, and you only need a little bit, like one applicator's worth is plenty for both eyes. I just dot a little bit on each eye, blend it all the way from the lid to the brow bone, and it really does help a lot with just keeping my eyeshadows on my eyelids all day. Alright, so for eyeshadow, I've got two recommendations. If you're wanting to go the route of like a smaller palette or quad, I highly recommend the E.L.F. bite-sized eyeshadow quads. Same price as the bite-sized cheek duos, and you're getting 4 beautiful colors. They've got so many different options. They've got some more colorful options if you want to play around with those, but they've also got some great neutrals. I have the shade Rose Water. These are just beautiful shades for every day. I love just throwing this like matte shade in my crease, and then either one of those shimmers on the lid. I use the dark shade as like a liner or to deepen up the crease if I want to. The shade Cream and Sugar also looks like a great option for just like a neutral everyday quad. I know a lot of people love that one. Great quality on these. I cannot believe they're only $3. The only thing to keep in mind is that I've found, at least with this shade Rose Water, it's very fragile. It breaks easily. For example, this fell from like my vanity onto my carpeted floor here, and 2 of the shades like broke and shattered, so I had to repress them. I'm not sure if all of the shade variations are that breakable, but it's just something to keep in mind. Like, may not be the best for travel or to like throw in your makeup bag if that's what you're wanting to do, because it's a little bit delicate. And then another option if you want a slightly larger palette are the Profusion 10-pan palettes. I have the mauves here, and this is just beautiful. They've also got some other like more brownish neutral shade variations, like the nudes one looks really pretty. I think there's one called Bear. Lots of options. I also have, if you want something like a little bit more fun and colorful, I have their pastel palette. This recently came out, and I actually have a video testing this out if you want to check that out. This is really nice. The only one of the 10 pans I didn't like so much was the Spectrum palette. That one was just kind of difficult to work with. The shades were just very sheer. But these are really nice. I do recommend wearing them over a white base like the NYX Jumbo Pencil in Milk. But beautiful pastel palette for $5. Did I mention these are $5 for 10 shades, which is just such a steal. You can find them at Walmart. The mauves is a great like pinky berry cranberry color. The shimmers in here are just stunning. So really recommend those for a great budget-friendly option. For eyeliner, I would recommend a nice pencil liner for a starter kit. My favorite are the CoverGirl Perfect Point Plus liners. These are so easy to use because they have a really, really fine tip, so you can get right close to the lash line. This is the shade Espresso. I would really recommend, especially for beginners, a brown pencil liner. I think people underestimate the power of like a beautiful, rich brown. It's a little bit softer than just like a stark black. And I don't know, it just looks so pretty with so many looks. Today I'm wearing a brown pencil liner kind of winged out on my upper lash line. It's actually not this one though. I'm actually wearing the CoverGirl Kohl eyeliner pencil. I don't recommend that one because they're very hard to sharpen, but this is beautiful. I have several shades of this, but I definitely recommend the brown or just a solid black is great to start out with. For mascara, I don't currently have this one because I try to only have like 1 or 2 mascaras at a time, but I would highly recommend the CoverGirl Lash Blast mascara in the orange tube, just that classic one that I'm sure we all had in high school. It's so good. It's such a classic for a reason, I think. It gives great length, volume, separation, and I think that would be a great one to start out with. It's got kind of a rubber bristle brush, but it's not too spiky, like you're not going to poke your eye out with it or anything. Alright, so moving on to lips. I've got a bullet lipstick recommendation and a lip gloss recommendation, and actually both are from E.L.F. So my favorite drugstore bullet lipstick right now is the E.L.F. Seriously Satin Lipsticks. I now have 3. The packaging on these is a little bit cheap. The one that I've had for the longest has kind of started to crack a little bit. It's a little bit annoying, but yeah, maybe just don't be like tossing these in your purse willy-nilly. Try to keep them nice and secure. But I've got the shades Cream, Persimmon, and Nectar. And these are beautiful. My favorites are Persimmon and Nectar. I do find that Cream, because it is such a light nude, I pretty much have to top this with a gloss, but it is really nice for applying to like the center of your lips if you want to do kind of like an ombre lip and you want the center of your lips to be a little bit lighter. This is a great one for that, but I use it a lot. Like I've already used a ton of this. And then Persimmon is a beautiful like bright orange color. I love this in the summertime, either like fully opaque on my lips, or sometimes I like to kind of sheer it out and like blot it a little bit for a softer look. So pretty. And Nectar is the one that I'm loving in the fall. That's not what I have on my lips right now, but it is, I've been wearing it a lot lately. It's a nice like peachy medium nude color. It's a little bit deep on my lips and I love it, especially with the medium and like the brighter shade of this that I have. These don't look dry on my lips at all. I would say even though these are called a satin lipstick, I feel like they're a little bit more matte than satin in my opinion. But they stay in place really well. They're just really nice. Like, if these were in nicer packaging, this could totally pass as a high-end formula because it's really nice. And then the lip gloss I want to recommend is another one from E.L.F. This is actually their lip lacquer. This is a little bit newer to me. I also love their lip plumping glosses, but this one is half the price of the lip plumping glosses and it's really nice. I have the shade Fantasy and it's this beautiful kind of like champagne-y, peachy, shimmery gloss. Even though it's shimmery, it doesn't look like too frosty on my lips, but it's just a really beautiful color, a little bit smoothing on the lips, doesn't have much of a scent at all, maybe a tiny bit, but very inoffensive. And unlike the lip plumping gloss, this does not give your lips that like cooling, tingly effect. So if you're not into that, this would be a great option. And I just think it's a beautiful gloss for $3. I do have this one on my lips today over the Estate liquid lipstick in Lolly. This is a liquid lipstick. My lips were looking a little dry, so I threw some of this on. And they've got a lot of colors. They've got a clear one that I know a lot of people really like, but they've got some other shades as well. So last but not least, I do want to recommend some brushes if you're on the hunt for some good drugstore brushes. So first off, my favorite drugstore brand for brushes is EcoTools. I also love their makeup sponges. The Bio Blender is my favorite. And then their face brushes hold up so beautifully. They're a little bit more expensive than like E.L.F, but they last for years. I've got the Precision Blush Brush here and the Full Powder Brush. I also have some eye brushes from EcoTools that I've had for over 10 years and they're still working. I still wear them, or I still use them every day. They're great. So really recommend EcoTools if you want to invest in some really good quality brushes. You can find them at like Target, drugstores, Ulta, and they are fairly affordable, especially compared to like Sigma and, you know, higher end brands like that. Another brand that makes some good brushes is BH Cosmetics. BH Cosmetics you can find at Ulta and on their own website. This brush is called the V2. That's just the name of it, I guess. But I love this for bronzer. It's such a unique shape. It's got a great amount of taper to it, but it's also very rounded. It's a little bit fluffy though. It's not too dense. So I feel like I just get such a nice smooth diffused application of bronzer with this. And then I also have great luck with a lot of the E.L.F. brushes. These are not going to last you like 10 plus years. So, you know, but if you want something really inexpensive, I definitely recommend these, especially their black handle brushes. I use their highlighting brush all the time to like set my under eyes with powder. This would also be great for highlighter, of course. And then their eye brushes, I love their fluffy eye blender brush, their crease brush. They work great. Sometimes the ferrules do come a little bit loose, so you may find yourself having to glue them back down at some point, but overall, especially for the price, these are really good. And then I love the E.L.F. Precision Featherlight highlighter brush. This one is a little bit more expensive. I think it's $8 for this. This is my favorite highlighter brush. It's just so easy, and I'd never get that like solid stripe of highlighter when I use this. So if you have trouble getting highlighter to like look right on your skin, I recommend a really fluffy brush like this. The bristles are kind of long and they're just very floppy, which, I don't know, it's just kind of satisfying to use, and it just makes highlighter application so much easier. So love that as well. But those are just some quick brush recommendations in case you are looking for some good ones to start off your collection. So I hope you enjoyed this drugstore makeup starter kit video, whether you are just getting into makeup or you've been into it for a long time and you just want some good affordable options. I hope this was fun to watch and helped you out in some way. If you did enjoy it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to check out the Patreon down below. I'm so excited to get started with that, and hopefully I will talk to you again very soon in my next video. Bye!